Before he was the first Black Secretary of State, he was a geology major at City College. In this episode, we mourn the passing of Colin Powell, who never stopped expressing his gratitude and love for CUNY. We signal a new study focused on analyzing New York City deportations, and on a lighter note, introduce you to Prospect Park's tennis director, and then the legendary, granted controversial comedian, Jackie Mason. Welcome to Urban U.
Before Colin Powell began his trailblazing military career, he was a student right here at CUNY City College of New York. We had a chance to speak with Powell back in 2013 when his alma mater christened a school in his name. Please join us in remembering the nation's highest-ranking soldier, the nation's highest-ranking diplomat, Bronx native and proud CUNY alumnus, Colin Powell.
In the Army, they teach you, no matter how cold everybody may be, you're the leader, you're never cold. Troops may be hungry, you're never hungry, you're the leader. They may be tired, you're never tired. And
you're
so
that even keel.
you've got to be optimistic that things will get better. And I think our youngsters don't get enough of that.
And that may be why retired General Colin Powell has maintained such close ties with City College. As a kid growing up in the Bronx, Powell was unsure of the direction his life would take, but that all changed in 1954. That's when Powell began working on his geology degree at City College of New York and stumbled upon what became his life's calling.
You said that when you came here to City College, ROTC was something you connected with. For the first time in your life, you really found yourself. Mm-hmm. What was it about ROTC that you did connect with?
Well, I was a little over 17 years old when I tripped over ROTC in the summer of 1954. And it was the structure, it was the discipline, it was the guys. When you're 17 or so and you're leaving home really for the first time, you're kind of adrift. And I found a new home, I found a new family. With my fellow students here in the ROTC.
After graduating from City College in 1958, Powell served 2 tours in Vietnam. Upon his return, he was chosen to serve as a White House Fellow with the Nixon administration. In 1987, he would become National Security Advisor to President Reagan, and in 1989, he became a 4-star general under President George H.W. Bush, and later that year was nominated to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. At 52 years old, he became the youngest Joint Chiefs chair. He was also the first chairman to come out of ROTC. In 2001, Powell was again called to serve his country, but this time the general would leave his military uniform at home and serve as Secretary of State to George W. Bush.
As a soldier transitioning into diplomacy, was it harder for you to not be the Army general, the orders get done?
No, not particularly, because I had been National Security Advisor for 2 years to President Reagan, so I kind of understood the civilian side of government. And when I walked into the State Department, somebody said, well, what do we call you, General or Mr. Secretary? I said, Mr. Secretary, I'm Secretary of State.
In 1989, Parade magazine had published your 13 Rules of Leadership. For CUNY students and alumni, what guidelines would you give them today?
The reporter who wrote that article asked me to look at some little sayings I had under my desk glass that he heard about and just read off some of them. And I read off the first 13. Number 1 says, it isn't as bad as you think. It'll be better in the morning. And the 13th rule is a derivative from a military saying, and that is that always think things are going to get better, no matter how bad things may seem at the moment. And I think that's an attitude for young people. They face difficulties in school, they face other difficulties in life, and it starts to get them down. And so, no man, never be down, always be up.
While Powell's military career influenced his tenure as Secretary of State, he already had experience with international relations as a kid growing up in the South Bronx.
When you were a young man growing up in the city, my understanding is you worked in a baby furniture store and you picked up some Yiddish sayings.
Yeah,
did any of those translate, did you get any wisdom or guidance from those
whenever I was kind of annoyed with somebody, I got gesunden keppel, hit you in the side of the head, or a blessing, and depending on how you say it, it's either a blessing or a slap in the side of the head. I preferred it as a slap in the side of the head. The biggest lesson I got from my experience in the toy store was from the Russian immigrant Jew who owned it, Jay Sixer. And after I'd worked there for a few summers and a few Christmas seasons, he pulled me aside and he said to me, Kali, you're a good worker. I love having you in the store. You're part of the family. But listen, you can't ever stay here. You have to get your education. You got a good family and you're smart, go get your education, make sure you move on. And so I never had any intention of staying in that toy store, but I was so touched that he thought enough of me to tell me that I had the potential to do other things in life and don't think that I should stay there.
Through the years, Powell remained committed to his collegiate alma mater. In 1997, he founded the Colin Powell Center for Leadership and Service. In 2013, it became the Colin L. Powell School for Civic and Global Leadership, a degree-granting school that encompasses City College's social science departments. Dr. Vincent Boudreau was the school's first director and is now City College president.
We work with him to develop programs that do for City College students today what City College did for him when he was a student here. It's never been a question. He's always said, make the school, make the center a program that emphasizes leadership and success in our students.
Powell became known for a hands-on approach while running the State Department. He brought that same approach to City College.
I'll be spending a lot of time up here at City. We used to have just a center to worry about. Now we have a much larger school to worry about and 5 academic departments I want to get to know and visit. And so I'm spending a lot more time at City.
We're able to bring in people like James Baker, Barbara Walters, Jamie Dimon, to come and speak to the students because General Powell, wherever he goes and whoever he meets, says, you've got to get up to City College. You've got to meet these students. You've got to talk to these students.
One of those big names drawn to City College is Tom Brokaw, who was a member of the board of directors for the Powell Center. Brokaw spent 22 years as anchor and managing editor of the NBC Nightly News.
Everybody that we knew in our age group had probably served in the war in some capacity. There are coaches and teachers and the businessmen up and down Main Street and so on. And he really then becomes a continuation of the greatest generation. Somebody who is one of the most highly regarded Americans of our time.
You're as much a historian as you are a journalist. What will history say about Colin Powell?
Well, history would say that Colin Powell was in the front ranks of the first full opportunity that African Americans had to serve in any capacity in this country. We now have had an African American president, but we had not had an African American chairman of the Joint Chiefs or a Secretary of State. Those were huge breakthroughs.
Powell was granted a distinguished professorship at City College. To this day, the Colin Powell School still incorporates some of the same lessons that Powell learned as a City College student 50 years ago.
What I learned in New York, in the multi-ethnic neighborhood I grew up in, everybody was from somewhere else. Everybody had about the same level of income in the family. So we were all kind of equals, and we had to get along, and we had diverse backgrounds. And I think I learned from that how to sort of respect what diversity is and respect others.
Hello, I'm Bernice Johnson-Eanes, president of York College. York College is a gem of Jamaica, Queens. Founded in 1966, moved to Jamaica, Queens in 1971, we're proud members of the CUNY community. The City University of New York is the city's university, and we are dedicated to educating all of those students who want to transform their lives through higher education. We want to thank the faculty, staff, and students who have been so patient during our COVID pandemic, moving to COVID maintenance, moving to COVID recovery. We want everybody to understand it's time to come back. We're happy for you to be here with us as partners, and let us know what we can do to help support you. Again, remember that for over 50 years, York College has been pivotal in the work of this community in Jamaica, Queens. And we are dedicated to being CUNY strong and being part of the City University of New York. Thank you again, and remember, we are one York and one CUNY.
New York City is very important when we're thinking about deportation in the United States, and especially when we're thinking about the criminal deportation pipeline. So known, right, forever as this melting pot of immigrants and immigration city. So 3.1 million immigrants reside in New York City out of 8.6 million residents total. So it's a very large immigrant population, but also at the same time, we're also home to some of the busiest immigration courts in the country, and several thousand people are deported from New York City each year. So while we're known as this home of immigrants, as a sanctuary city, it's still a key site of deportation in the United States.
CUNY Graduate Center graduate Sarah Tosh, who now teaches at Rutgers University, and Professor Brotherton of John Jay College, just received a grant from the National Science Foundation to carry out the study over 2 years of what they call the deportation pipeline in New York City. With the help of CUNY graduate students, the team will interview a variety of subjects, such as immigrants, lawyers, and advocates, and will look at the text, the sanctions, and the laws to understand how the deportation pipeline process gets ratified.
Stop deportations! No borders! No nations!
ICE deportations in New York City almost doubled in 2017, the first year of Trump's presidency. In its 2020 report, ICE writes, while operations have changed due to COVID-19, detention remained necessary for some aliens, and it continued to be the primary pathway by which ICE enforcement and removals operations was able to effectuate removals.
We use the concept of the criminal deportation pipeline to understand the way that communities of color, in particular, immigrant communities in New York, are funneled toward immigrant detention and deportation. So when we think about what leads people to deportation, often people are going to think immigration law, ICE enforcement, but really the criminal justice system plays such an important role in what leads people towards deportation. And that's really what we want to focus on in this study. Zero tolerance policing was created in New York City, and this zero tolerance for minor crimes, and which has led to extremely racially unequal misdemeanor arrests. So we see people being picked up for these minor crimes throughout the city, and this is a major way that people can be entered into the deportation pipeline. What we already have found in our preliminary findings is that the neighborhoods that are the most over-policed and have the highest levels of criminal deportation are also the neighborhoods with highest Caribbean and Afro-Latino populations. So the neighborhoods with the most population of Black immigrants. So we're looking at 5 general areas of high deportation in New York City. One is in the Bronx and includes 5 neighborhoods of high deportation in the Bronx: Morris Heights, University Heights, Fordham, East Tremont, and Bedford Park. One includes 5 neighborhoods of high deportation in Brooklyn. These are high criminal deportation, so East New York, Brownsville, Flatbush, Canarsie, Crown Heights. And then we're also including Sunset Park as another neighborhood in Brooklyn with high general deportation, but not high criminal deportation. Washington Heights is another community that we're including, as well as Corona, Elmhurst, and Flushing in Queens County. While the deportation pipeline in many ways seems bleak, it's easy to see the people who are affected by it as victims. A very important part of our study is also looking at all of the forms of resistance that have emerged and continue to emerge in response to the pipeline. We're really looking at the community-based advocacy in these different neighborhoods that are a focus of our study. The protective policies that have emerged in New York are the result of a lot of community-based advocacy and activism that has occurred over the past 20, 30 years, and also that is ongoing now. So in these broader protests we see right now about the criminal justice system and about racial inequality more generally, we're seeing that young immigrant activists being an important part of these movements and making these same linkages that we really are focusing on in our study.
For Urban U, I'm Bruno Villarosa Giuliani.
Coming to this country as a kid, my family didn't know much about applying to college, but I knew that's why we came to Queens. CUNY made my family's journey worth it. It let me turn a passion for the human mind into a career in neuroscience. And when I graduated, CUNY gave me the legal resources to get my US citizenship and a job in a lab that I love. No matter where you start your journey, the CUNY Familia will take you where you want to go.
Still up on Urban U, the Prospect Park Tennis Center, now in the good hands of Brooklyn College alum and Medgar Evers teacher Adrian Clark, who some call a Renaissance man. Stay tuned.
I can sort of boast, I think, that I'm probably the only person who came up playing tennis at Prospect Park and made it to the US Open.
Adrian Clark has had a colorful journey as a tennis player long before he became the first Black director of the Prospect Park Tennis Center. He's been called a Renaissance man with 2 master's degrees from Brooklyn College. He's written short stories for literary journals. He's taught English at CUNY's Medgar Evers College. And he plays steel pan. But tennis has long been his first love since he was a young man growing up in Barbados.
Started at 12, I played my first tournament at 14, and I was frankly the worst player in the whole tournament, I think. I didn't win a single game from anybody I played. When I was 16, I was playing for Barbados. I was the number 2 junior, I think, in Barbados at 16. At 17, I was the number 1 junior in Barbados and top 4 in the entire English-speaking Caribbean. And it was because I loved the sport so much. I didn't like school, but I went to school so I could play tennis, because that's where the courts were.
His time on the court was put on hold, but only for a short time after his mother moved him and his siblings to America.
My mother told us, well, of course, we have to work. I actually worked on Wall Street when I was 17 years old, hated every minute of it, made sure I did badly enough to get fired, and went back to tennis because that's what I wanted to do. So I would play tournaments in Brooklyn and so on, and I played a tournament at the Port Washington Tennis Academy on Long Island. Played the owner's son, and I beat him fairly soundly, and he came into the net. We shook hands, and he said, "How would you like to train here?" For free. The Port Washington Tennis Academy was the premier tennis academy at the time throughout the country. So the number 1 player at Port Washington was John McEnroe. And we also had professionals coming through like Arthur Ashe, Chris Evert. They'd come through and play.
His tennis improved, and by then, tennis legend Althea Gibson had already broken down barriers in the sport, becoming the first African American to win a Grand Slam title. Thereafter, the United States Tennis Association ended a long stretch of bigotry, allowing other Black players to enter the US Open. Clark became one such player after he won nationals for the American Tennis Association, an organization established in 1916 to support Black tennis players that had been barred from playing in mainstream tournaments. Clark's win ushered him into the qualifying rounds of the US Open in 1983, the year that he says was his best in tennis, and yet his last.
Because tennis is still a sport where it takes a lot of money to be able to travel all over the world and stay in hotel rooms, of course, and play for months and months at a time. And it was frustrating after a while, so I just said, well, I'd achieved a big dream of mine, so I'll just stop.
Today, he enjoys spending time with his loved ones, and he works largely behind the scenes to make sure the Prospect Park Tennis Center runs smoothly.
Those are the hard courts.
The center hosts tournaments, has a junior program, and offers private lessons, all under Clark's guidance. Though it's a new journey, his work still serves him a dose of his greatest passion.
Despite whatever else I do from time to time, like teaching school and so on, it's always been tennis that I come back to. It's first love, and it's still there.
For Urban U, Abby Ashola.
Hi, my name is Aya. I'm a registered nurse at New York Presbyterian Columbia Medical Center, and I'm a founder of fashion brand The Off Label New York. I graduated from Baruch College with biological sciences degree, and I minored in chemistry and physics as a part of my pre-med program in 2015. Baruch College prepared me extremely well for my master's in nursing at Columbia University. The best piece of advice I would like to give for students is to take advantage of everything that Baruch offers. Small and intimate class environment, and extremely knowledgeable and approachable faculty.
As a matter of fact, I became a comedian. People don't know this because I was always very self-conscious. I always was. I am to this day. I was once so self-conscious that if I even went to a football game, if I saw the players get into a huddle, I used to think that they were talking about me.
In the classic tradition of old Jews telling jokes, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better archetype than Jackie Mason. With his recent passing just this year, at the age of 93, the comedy world lost one of the last titans of Borscht Belt humor. Nowadays, the Borscht Belt is probably most recognizable to many audiences as the setting for several episodes of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
My first everything happened in the Catskills. Everything.
But from the early parts of the 20th century, through its heyday in the late 50s and early 60s, hotels and resorts a few hours north of the city became the summer getaway destination for much of New York City's Jewish population, and as such, Jewish entertainers, comedians particularly. And even if you've never heard of the Borscht Belt before, you've certainly heard of some of the icons who got their start there. Mel Brooks, Rodney Dangerfield, Joan Rivers, Woody Allen, Lenny Bruce, Sid Caesar, Don Rickles, Jerry Lewis. The list goes on. And Jackie Mason, born Yaakov Moshe HaKohen Maza, probably had the deepest Jewish roots of all of them. After graduating from City College in 1953, he became an ordained rabbi in a long line of family rabbis, stretching back to his father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and great-great-grandfather. But a funny thing happened while leading his congregation. He found that people would start coming just to hear him tell jokes during his sermons. He would soon leave the synagogue and began performing stand-up at Borscht Belt hotels and New York City nightclubs, honing his trademark style, fingers gesticulating, making often exasperated everyman observations, rapid-fire delivery, self-deprecating, and often deprecating to the audience, too. His first big break was on The Steve Allen Show in 1962, and he would go on to greater fame on The Ed Sullivan Show, never losing his thick Yiddish accent, refusing talent agency advice to take speech lessons. After a falling out with Ed Sullivan, Mason's star would wane until the 80s, when he burst back into prominence with a wildly successful one-man Broadway show, The World According to Me, winning a special Tony Award.
Thank you.
And for the last 3 decades, he would famously be a recurring guest on The Simpsons, winning an Emmy for voicing Krusty the Clown's rabbi father.
Excuse us, Rabbi Krastovsky?
So, what can I do for you, my young friend?
We came to talk to you about your son.
I have no son!
Oh, great. We came all this way and it's the wrong guy.
I didn't mean that literally.
As always, it's hard to separate art from artist, especially in the realm of comedy, where often the line between joke and vitriol is blurry. But suffice to say, his later years weren't without controversy, having called both former NYC Mayor David Dinkins and Barack Obama a Yiddish slur. And his opinionated commentary often took on a darker, hardline political tone over the last decade. For however his latter-day statements or political views do or don't color his career in retrospect, his place in history purely as a comedy legend is undeniable, having landed at number 63 on Comedy Central Presents The 100 Greatest Stand-Ups of All Time.
Thank God that I'm such a hit. I desperately appreciate it. To me, it's the most fantastic thing in the world, and I deserve every minute of it.
For the record, I'm Ari Goldberg.
We leave you with yet another clip showcasing recent work from our Hunter College dance students. Thanks for watching these stories from the nation's largest urban university, the City University of New York.